a little. Well, guys, now that we're on round three, take three, welcome to the Half Guard Half Hour. My amazing guest this evening is none other than the owner, operator of Physical Culture Collective, your friend and mine, Gavin. Gavin,
Awesome to
thank you
be here,
for
Mike. Awesome
thank
to
you
be
so
here.
much. Thank you. I'm so humbled
Yeah,
that you're taking the time out to talk to me tonight and be on my show. As we're getting people to sign on from your end and mine, let's kind of jump right in and start talking, man. Let's tell me a little bit about you. Tell me about your humble beginnings, right? Because I don't know if a lot of people know your background in music, your background in strength or martial arts. Tell me how
um,
it all started.
it's weird because I come from like the hardcore scene, and we were always the hardcore scene was always there was a certain amount of to say athleticism that was that was kind of part of being in the hardcore scene because we're known for like the pits and moshing and all that stuff, and there was always an interest in martial arts. I didn't get really involved in martial arts till I was about 20 years old. A friend of mine who had the chance to go over to Europe. He started training Muay Thai in Europe. When he came back and he was like, "Oh my God, I started doing this. You got to check it out." So I started working with him, and from there we hunted down coaches and this, that, and the other thing. And I did the whole run. I had a fight career, and I had started coaching at other gyms, and um, at about the point I think I was like 36 years old, I had this one fight, which was like the first time I'd ever really been like um I had been beaten. I'd never been knocked out. I got TKO'd in this fight. I got in the second round. I got pinned in the corner, and just for safety's sake, my corner threw in the towel because this guy just 16 shots unanswered, and I was at that point. It was weird because a few things happened within the next month where I was training for my next fight that I realized at 36 years old. I was like, wow, these guys are not getting any, they're all younger. They're like the guy that I fought at that point was like, he was 23 years old, 6'7". And anybody who knows me, I'm like 5'9.5" with the wind at my back, so it's like, and I I was decided it was like really it was time to hang up the gloves as far as competing in Muay Thai, and I love competing, so I started doing judo, and I trained under Taimak Ono Johnston for a number of years, and I kept seeing these guys who were doing jiu-jitsu, and I had friends who trained jiu-jitsu, and then finally I was like, well, I got to give this shit a try. Because I was doing really well in judo, but it was still something missing. So I kind of picked three schools, um, and three of the top schools that were referred to me. There was one school that was it was a highly known school in New York that I don't want to mention, but I didn't want to go there because I didn't want nepotism. I had too many friends that trained at that gym. And I wanted to really kind of stay away from like having quote unquote a social scene, because I just wanted to train the art. So I basically put out emails to three gyms. Russell got back to me in 45 minutes. One gym got back to me like 5 days later. The other gym I still haven't heard from, and they're still open. But Russell, I sent the email out, and Russell Kerr, who was at that point, I think, a purple belt, one of Josh's instructors, hey, yeah, we'd love to have you come in and this, that, and the other. And I went in and I did like my intro session with Russ, which anybody who's done the intro session was kind of like, they know how Clockwork runs the intro session. Like it could be very well at the end of the intro session where one of the instructors says, yeah, you know what, this might not be the gym for you. Because at that point too, we're getting a lot of guys who were like, yeah, I'm going to be the next UFC superstar. I just wanted to train and have some place to be active, and was really, really intrigued with jiu-jitsu. And I came on, I had already started training some jiu-jitsu, and I was a purple belt under someone else, which I basically dropped the purple belt and walked on as a white belt, and started training with Clockwork. And at that point, like the guys on the floor was like, there was like Benny Rappel, which Benny was a white belt at that point, and he's a fucking savage. Clay Burwell, Aaron D, the Professor. There, I mean, like, all the guys from like the 14th Street era.
Yeah.
Like, it was such a group of, the only way to put it is beautiful savages. Like
Yeah.
Kevin Hatt, Seb was a blue belt, you know, and was still like, I remember the first time I ever rolled with Seb, I was fucking terrified.
I'm still terrified.
Yeah, I mean, it just like, there's one thing he's always had was like this brute force, and being able to use all of his force on one limb. And he was just so good at it. And I mean, those of you who are learning from him now, he has refined that down to such an art form. And it's something,
For sure.
that, you know, it's just so amazing to watch. And it's funny because, you know, you see certain disciples of his, like Dax, like Brianna. Like Brianna, the only way I can classify Brianna is like, she's like sugar on a switchblade. You know, it's you know,
that is the best compliment I think you'll ever hear.
You'll never meet someone who is such a sweet, loving person that will show you more ways to put the hurt on someone.
I think we need t-shirts that say sugar on a switchblade.
Yeah, no doubt. I would be totally down for that. She's you know, but yeah, he has a definite, like, and this is the interesting to see. Seb has a style, but his style is firmly rooted in fundamentals, you know? And that's kind of like where it all comes from, is like, you see people that talk about, and you see this a lot in Muay Thai. Like guys like, well, my style, but they'd have dog shit fundamentals, you know?
Of course.
You know, and really what it was like this big paper mache, like, you know, facade over, you know, a litmus paper fucking foundation, as opposed to having like a real concrete. Hold on a second, everybody. Here, have some cat.
we've got cat on the half guard half hour.
We got cat on the half guard. Here's a little dog for you.
Yeah, we got a bunch of those. So that leads me to another a good question for you then. You know, you have this amazing background in music, in the hardcore scene. You have this great Muay Thai background. What, you know, you talked about coaching for years and years and years.
Eat your heart out, Emily.
You talked about coaching for years and years and years in different places. What led you to that light bulb that went off in your head one day to say, this is what's missing, and I want to open up my own place to add to that thing that's missing in the scene right now? So what was it that you felt was missing that led you to open Physical Culture Collective?
I think that's what it was. It was like, it was weird. It was like, at a certain point, there was this big drive in martial arts. And everybody was like, and it was very extreme. Everybody was training, you know, super hard, 6-7 days a week, doing double days. And there was something that was missing. And a lot of it, what I've learned more and more is like recovery is what was missing. And the best way that I can, and I've always thought this was, well, let me go back. Now, I haven't always thought this, but this is what I've learned through my own training, was that it's like the human body is an amazing organism, but it's a lot like when you're doing a sport, especially like Jiu Jitsu or Muay Thai or Judo or wrestling. It's kind of like you're trying to take this bike and ride it across the country. And if you don't get off the bike every once in a while and like true the spokes and check the tire pressure and make sure the chain's tight, that bike's going to fucking break down. And you're going to be left on the fucking side of the road. And a lot of what came out of Physical Culture Collective was getting and this is a part of it, was getting it so that athletes could, you know, and I talk about athletes, I talk about anybody who does martial arts. Athletes could train longer and better and more productively. Now this gets into the whole thing, because I was the one who asked the question in when you did Josh's interview about, you know, have you seen more and more people coming in
Yeah.
from the big box gyms, you know, the Planet Fitnesses, the Blink Fitness, even like Equinoxes and, you know, Crunch and so on, so forth like that. And I think a lot of that comes from that those gyms are really fucking lonely. A lot of the time what you get with that is you sign up your membership, you get put on an elliptical. Okay, okay, great. You pay your membership, get on that machine and stare at that TV set. You can do that on your fucking couch. What martial arts gyms tend to offer is community. And that's one of the main things that I think we have over the big box gyms is that we really have a community because, and you've heard me say this in classes, the best piece of equipment that we can offer you is a good training partner. And my mission at PCC really is to make a room full of really awesome training partners so that when someone walks up the stairs that's never heard, and actually, you know, we've had this before with like one person I'll definitely point out to is Jack Dwight, who when he signed up, he came in to do Muay Thai. He had no intention on doing Jiu Jitsu, and he fell in love with it, you know. And that's kind of like what I think my job is to make people fall in love with movement, with a martial art, with something that they can find and keep sustainable
So where did
throughout
you, sorry, go ahead.
throughout their whole journey. And that's the whole thing. Like what I try to get at with PCC, and you've seen this with my strength work, like I get my athletes really strong, and the whole base around them being strong is being sustainably strong. We're not chasing numbers like power lifters. You know, I'm not trying to train my jiu-jitsu guys to be able to master Olympic lifts. Those are two totally different sports. What I'm trying to do is get it so that the joints are stable as well as mobile, that their alignment is as good as possible, so that they're doing enough corrective work when they're not training jiu-jitsu so that they have less of a probability of getting injured while doing their martial art.
For sure. So talking about that, because I take your strength classes and I think they're fucking amazing. How do you come up with those types of concepts? Where do the concepts come from? How do you plan out your trainings for different athletes, right? For the jiu-jitsu guy, for the Muay Thai guy, et cetera, et cetera. How do you plan out how to physically train somebody who is performing in either MMA, jiu-jitsu alone, Muay Thai alone? Where does all of that come from? Because I've always been truly interested in the way your mind works in that concept.
See, I approach my strength training the same way that any genius would approach art or music. I steal from really, really brilliant people. I do. I mean, I'm dead serious. Like, I watch coaches like Martin Rooney. I watch coaches like Mark Robertson. There's so many coaches out there that I keep an eye on and see what they're doing and see the effects that they're, you know, Joel Jameson. There's like Larry Betts is one of my, he's a local guy, one of my favorite fucking coaches, super, super smart. I mean, I could run a list, just name drop motherfuckers, but it also depends. Here's the thing about it. It depends on what cycle they're in. Like, okay, are they in a competitive cycle? Are they getting ready for a competition? If someone's getting ready, say like we're working with someone and they're getting ready for a competition, I'm not going to try to get any gains out of them. I'm going to try to make it so that all the joints are protected and strong. I'm going to try to make sure that their alignment is good. I'm going to, as far as like metabolics go, I'm going to try to make sure that their recovery is good. If we're outside of, like, let's call it a fight camp, I'm going to take some, okay, well, let's look, what are the weaknesses? How can we bolster their weaknesses to make it so they aren't, because someone's always going to have a weak point, but try to make it so that their weak points are some, you know, comparatively aren't as bad. And then also taking their strengths and getting those as maximized as possible. And then it gets into, you know, you have to look at the different qualities of, you know, of strength, power, endurance. These are all different systems. Now, what the problem is that a lot of people, they try to train them all at the same time, which is like trying to ride a herd of horses. You can't. You have to train each one of these qualities kind of separately. Now, that gets into the idea of, you know, where I see, and this is, I have to say that Muay Thai guys are really guilty of this, of taking their skill training and treating it like metabolic training, and then you end up with shitty fucking movement patterns. What I would, the way I like to approach my metabolic training is I use movement patterns that are not going to have any kind of deleterious effect on the skill set if they break down. You know, if the skill set, like, you know, I'm working metabolic, I'm working on the pulmonary system, I'm working on the cardiovascular system. I need to use movement patterns that are simplistic, that the person isn't going to get hurt doing. And then, you know, be able to take those at the end run when the person gets into their competition. That's where you're taking your strength, your skill, and your speed, and all of those great ingredients, and mixing them together. You know, with my Muay Thai, I'm not a fan of hard sparring. I don't believe in it. I think it's foolhardy, and I think it leads to ending a lot of people's careers really early. So it's, you know, and I think it's kind of the same way, you know, and you see it with young jiu-jitsu guys. It's like they don't know that, you know, that this sound, that's the sound of an education. You know, that's the sound, and that's, see, right there, I'm stealing from a coach. Who says that? Brianna Myers. You know, it's, you know, that's, you know, the sound of a tap is the sound of an education. That means you're learning. That means reset, you know. And what do? We learn from our mistakes and we course correct, like anything. You have to, I think that's one of the things too, is like with martial arts, is being humble enough to allow yourself to be corrected, because that's a hard thing. No one wants to be like, oh, well, you know, you're like, oh, I never, you're like, you know, those guys, oh, I never tap. Like, you must be fucking hurting a lot, man.
Oh yeah, no, completely. I think
Yeah.
the ego, and I've talked about this a couple times on here. Ego gets in the way, especially in the beginning phases of everything.
Yeah.
So that transitions me to a good point for somebody who's been a coach for as long as you have. What's some advice that you can impart to the viewers and impart to the people that are watching, whether they're Muay Thai, strength, a combination of everything, or just jujitsu people, in terms of how to make their journeys long term, how to get longevity out of their bodies? What's some advice you can impart to the
Always leave a
people
little gas.
watching?
Always leave a little gas in the tank. You know, always leave 1 or 2 reps in the tank. Don't work to the point where you're working, where you're, you know, you're absolutely fatigued, because when, you know, if there's a quote, fatigue makes cowards of us all. You know, you don't want to work to the point where you're absolutely fatigued and your technique starts to fall apart, because martial arts at its base root is about the technique. You have to have faith in the technique, and the technique has to be good, and the technique is a tool. The technique should be refined, it should be sharpened. And what happens when we get tired, or we start to let our technique go to the wayside. There's an old saying in boxing: don't let your mind remember shit. Meaning, don't let your last movements be the bad movements, because those are the ones that your brain's going to lock onto. And then what happens is you have bad movement qualities, you have bad movement patterns. Then it's really hard to retrain those. You know, there's the old saying, drillers are killers. And drilling is not sparring, and sparring is not fighting. Always remember that. You know, it's not about, when you're sparring with someone, whether it's jiu-jitsu or it's Muay Thai, it's not about, you're not trying to beat the person, you're trying to refine your own skills. You know, and I think if you know, take it a little bit slower. Don't push yourself to the nth. Don't think that more is not better. More is just more. Okay. It should be quality training. You know, it's like, I remember right before we had this horrible breakup. I'm so sorry. You know, I miss you guys. But right before this happened, like I finally had freed up my Saturday afternoons, and I was like, oh, awesome. I can go to Saturday no-gi. Because I already, you know, I trained Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You know, Friday noon class, best class on the schedule, you know. And I was like, oh, I can go in and train on Saturday. And that extra 6 to 8 rounds, especially at my age, I'm 52 years old, is really neurologically taxing, you know? And I noticed the week after that, I was just rolling like crap. I was in pain, like my joints hurt. And I was like, well, what am I fucking doing? I'm doing all my recovery stuff. But that extra, you have to look at it like, you know, as like, you know, you don't want to be too taxing on the neurological system, because that is where everything lies. And you want your neurological system to be strong. But, and that's, I mean, it's one of the things that like we're finding more and more is that like when people are breaking down, like you'll see people's neurological system start to break down. They start to get sick. They start to get worn out. And training just becomes miserable. And we should be able to approach this with joy. That's one of the, that's one of the biggest tips I can give anybody is to go about this fucking joyfully. This should be fun. You shouldn't be scared. You know, there should always be a little bit of fear there. Yeah, absolutely. That's why we do it. We want to put on a superhero game. But this art that we've chosen should be a joyous thing. This is something that we're all, oh shit, Giovanni, I miss you, bro. You know, this is whether it's Muay Thai or it's Jiu Jitsu or whatever you're doing, there should be love for the art, your training partner, you know, the gym that you train at, and not just the gym that you train at, but the community of gyms in our city that we have the ability, because everybody knows, like, we mix and mingle. We, you know,
Oh,
some
yeah.
of us go, yeah. So, like, you know, my Muay Thai guys will go and train with the guys at Gracie's. You know, like, we'll go over to Unity. We'll go over to, like, it's something that's kind of really cool because it's like, you know, different bodies, different types. And what does that make us? That makes us more friends. You
For
know,
sure.
that's
For
the cool
sure.
thing of it, is the fucking community that we get out of this. Is such, you know, and that's what I think in a way is kind of like very akin to, like, you know, the punk scene that I grew up in, is that this community is super important. You know, it's a
Awesome.
scene.
Yeah, no. It's the I mean, listen, you and I've known you since I was a white belt, you know, now we're going on almost 8 years. I've been training
Yeah.
at Clockwork and I've known you, and you know, throughout the years you've given me so much great advice and so on and so forth. So that leads me on to my next question before we start taking questions from the crowd.
Yep.
Emily had a question for us, but what do you tell your athletes now, or anybody watching that maybe not one of your athletes? What would you tell somebody now, especially in this downtime with very little room for error with COVID and things like that? What would you tell somebody, one, to keep them mentally sharp? What would be your advice? And two, what would you tell somebody to keep physically sharp as well?
Mentally sharp. I would say for all of you guys who haven't, like, have always talk shit about, like, oh, I got to start meditating. I got to start meditating. Now's the time. 10 minutes, you know, start with 5 minutes a day. Start with a minute a day. You know, find some time to just sit and be silent and focus on your breath. For me, do you want my opinion, kind of secret sauce of training, something that's highly neglected?
Yeah,
That,
please. Yeah, please let our watchers and listeners know
and
what's the secret. What's a good secret?
I'm targeting this one especially at Emily, because she is such a ferocious little fucking creature. Foot speed and agility. And I know a lot of you jiu-jitsu guys are going like, well, you know, I fight off my back. What do I need that for? Neurons that fire together, wire together. Your feet get fast, your hands will get fast. Your feet get dexterity, your hands will get dexterity. Okay, your brain recognizes an appendage as an appendage. Okay, And I'm telling you, foot strength is key. I had a talk about that today with Sensei, with Josh, because we've been like back and forth, and like he's been sending me stuff for like forms for like financial aid and all this stuff. He's been such a huge help with that stuff. But we were talking about like mobility, and like last night, after I went to PCC to train. I did some strength. I put myself on a 3-day ABA strength program, and I came back here and did yoga, and it was so funny because the strength, I great strength training, amazing strength, and I got here and the yoga. Oh my God! I woke up this morning and I was like, and a lot of it was I was really focusing on like, okay, what are my shortcomings, and a lot of it's in my ankles. My ankle mobility, which leads into the feet. If you can train your feet to be agile and your ankles to be mobile, your knees and your hips will thank you. Okay? Because there's nothing in the human body that works in a vacuum. I will challenge anybody to pick up a penny using one muscle. Anybody. Physically impossible. Okay?
Awesome.
Nothing in the human body works in a vacuum. And if you learn to get dexterity through your feet, through your legs, your jiu-jitsu, your Muay Thai, everything will get better. John Danaher said it. He noticed that the guys who had like dominant leg dexterity seem to always do better. And that's one of the things that, like, we're learning to be a 4-limbed animal now. We're not, with this whole idea of being bipedal, like, oh, well, I walk on my feet and I climb with my hands. No, we do all of that. The human body works as a system, So if you can get something to go out and like, do like cone drills, or if anybody wants to shoot me an email at physicalculturecollective@gmail.com, and I can give you some agility stuff that you can do, really simple stuff that will make your overall game sharper, right down to just simple jump rope stuff. Train your feet. If you train your feet, you get strong feet, everything else will follow suit.
Awesome. So we got some questions from the studio audience. I'll take Emily's question first. So how did the BJJ / Jiu-Jitsu program start, Diamond Heart start at Physical Culture Collective?
Well, I'd always really originally wanted to have a Jiu-Jitsu. I wanted to have Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu because they're two things that I love. And we originally started off the program. We had Ariel Medina was our black belt instructor, and we had built it up for a while, and at a point Ariel had to go back to the West Coast, so we were kind of left in limbo, and it was trying to like figure out the coaching situation. We had some younger guys who, like, we had a blue belt and the purple belt who were kind of like really holding the program together, and Pat Gassman at that point was a blue belt and really helping out to like just get good fundamentals. And it came down to, like, I finally went back to started training jiu-jitsu again in Clockwork, and I ran into Sandy, and Sandy at that point was still a brown belt, and I was like, hey, and I always loved Sandy's style. His style of like just be as a training partner was just amazing. As watching him coach people was just like he's so fun and lighthearted in his coaching. I was like, would you be interested in working with me over at Diamond Heart, because we're trying to grow this? And he jumped in, and from there, I reached we had started rolling together, and I was like, hey, we want to have more classes, and we brought you into the mix, and then we brought Queen Bree into the mix, and right now I can honestly say that, like, I think the jiu-jitsu program is the strongest that it's ever been, and I'm really, really, it's something I'm really super proud of. I can't wait to get it back rolling on the floor, man.
Awesome. Our guy and our friend, you brought him up, Mr. Pat Gassman, asks, how simple should the home workouts be?
How simple should the home workouts be?
Yeah.
Pretty simple. I mean, yeah, here's the thing about it too. You don't want to tax yourself too much. Okay, don't forget we're dealing with a virus now that kind of preys on weak immunity systems. Okay, if you train and drive your CNS, your central nervous system, into the ground, that will make you susceptible. Okay, so right now, I think a lot of the time your home training, if you can make it mostly body weight, I think that's the best move. And the reason for that is that means you have to train shit you don't like a lot of the unilateral stuff. You know, your lunges, your step ups, because bilateral stuff is simple. Like we can do squats and we could do hinges because that's the body working in tandem. But once you start to break the body down into unilateral, where balance is required and dexterity is required, it becomes a whole different thing. So right now, what I would do is I would start to give yourself, and this is stuff I've done myself. I've given myself like movements that I find challenging. I've been hitting lunges at all different friggin' angles. I've been really focusing on trying to get like as much ankle flexion through my movements as possible. And, I'm really looking forward to see how that's going to pay off, because I really want my movement qualities to be amazing, because I'm pretty sure my jiu-jitsu is going to be pretty suspect when I get back.
I think all of our jiu-jitsus are going to be pretty suspect when we get back. Awesome. Gavin, that is our half hour. First off, I want to start by saying thank you so much for joining me on the Half Guard Half Hour. I really appreciate your time. Anything you want to plug, anything you want to talk about before I let you go?
Yeah, there's a couple things I want to plug because I've talked to you about it. One of the guests that I approached you with, Jason C. Brown, who is one of the top strength coaches for jiu-jitsu and martial arts that I know of. He has a really great system of how he works. He's probably to my opinion, the best kettlebell coach in the country, if not in the world. He's the person I send all of our coaches to get certified through.
Awesome.
We're going to try to get that set up. I would totally encourage anybody who's watching right now to check that out. If you want to get some knowledge, that is someone that you really want, because I want to bring him in for a workshop when we get back, we get back in the spot. The other person is Nelson Puentes from Inverted Gear, because
Sweet.
we're talking with them about doing a Diamond Heart inverted co-brand. So, I want to do some Panda Diamond work.
Sweet.
So those are the two things that I really want to plug. The other thing too, anybody who needs some help with their home programming, shoot me an email at Physical Culture Collective @gmail. If you've got gear, let me know what you have and we can work with that. But quite honestly, if you have what I would like to see people working with, jump ropes, pull-up bars, and hand balancing, like push-ups and stuff like that. Let's get you moving the body properly. And then when we get back in the shop, what we can do is we can basically complement those movement patterns with the appropriate amount of resistance.
Awesome. Gavin, thank you so much for coming on, guys. Stay tuned.
Never a problem.
This episode will be up before the end of the weekend on YouTube. Search out my YouTube page at the Half Guard Half Hour on YouTube. And then I got 3 other episodes to still edit and get up. Josh's episode is up right now, guys. Go subscribe, like, and share, please.